This is Gregory Allen McCowan from Houston, Texas. GREGORYALANMCKOWN. State Texas ID 28632893. Now, I don't address any specific group or organization in the United States in welcoming anybody to my broadcast other than we the people. This is for a general knowledge of educating the people in this nation what they need to know about their future and how they command to control it. Now, I'd like to thank Google, YouTube, Microsoft, and other internet affiliates for not interfering with this broadcast or my other past or future broadcasts, because it's all delegated under my rights in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association, freedom of religion, calling myself God. You have a right to petition we the people as the government and peacefully assemble. And we'll get to that later. But in this moment, I'd like to go over the story of George Washington from his 1775 to 1783 war, where there was a revolt among the officers because they failed to receive what they considered sufficient pay for their services rendered. George Washington went in there and read them the Riot Act that he did not intend to set these people free just to create a military command to kidnap the United States. And that solved the dilemma. But after 4 years, the United States, in their independent states, considered that they needed to create a common law among them that they could each associate with in reference to each other in equality and justice. So in doing this, George Washington eventually set up the apportion law of accrediting the number of citizens inside the United States by consensus to be receiving the tariff trade tax that was being collected from England in gold and silver coin. And then they melt down the English gold and silver and restamp it in the American image. But in doing so, this was the war reparations that George Washington resolved for his militia command, that they would be compensated for their services during that war, in that when this trade tax was collected, it was distributed through the state governors of their legislatures equally to each of the Americans as their birth of a nation. This is the reason why George Washington is called the father of a nation, because he was now taking the tariff trade taxes collected from England and distributing it to the American people to pay for the growth of a nation, and their children could be paid for and raised. Now, in so doing, this money was being collected among the state citizens of gold and silver coin in growing wealth among the population with this tariff trade tax paid by England. Now, England had trouble overseas in Europe, in other parts where they were fighting for control of foreign nations, and they needed trade with America to support their efforts overseas. And the only way they could do that is to send that gold and silver coin to the United States while we sent the production of our nation to support them in their endeavors. Of course, Europe wanted to have the same access to the United States, and Napoleon spent millions of dollars in the United States only because we gave him that millions of dollars for the Louisiana Purchase. and so that he could therefore create a trade exchange just like England. So we were playing both sides of the fence in European war with trade. But this allowed the gold and the silver of the United States to grow in abundance in the possession of the American people, because when the trade tax was collected, it was distributed equally. Now, the reason why this happened is because the southern plantation said, we want 60% of that share to be paid to each of our slaves. And so the slaves were paid 60% of that equality that was to be delivered to the plantation owners to help finance the life of their slaves on their plantation. So this is why we know that the trade tariff taxes collected were not kept by the government. They were kept by either the slave plantation owners of the South or given directly to the free state citizens in the North. So that when Donald Trump is stealing 30% of your wealth by tariff trade taxes, the change in government from George Washington to Donald Trump communism is that he's giving the collected trade tariff taxes to the Bank of England, called the Federal Reserve. And that Bank of England is taking your money as slaves being kidnapped, robbed, and your wealth by the trillions of dollars put in their pocket. This is why you're going to change the government very quickly, very soon. Because this is a kidnapping of the United States as a captivity, by which England had ended the apportion law in 1865 by the murder of Abraham Lincoln, stopping the gold distribution to the state citizens, so that the government of England was paying the government of England to kidnap the United States. And that's what Donald Trump is doing now. He's taking your trade tariff taxes that he's collecting by 30% of the wealth of your children to finance your children being kidnapped by the army he's raising with that money collected, so that the Jewish billionaires of England can raise a mercenary army in the United States and say, we can commit armed overthrow of the American people under the disguise that our federal state has the legal jurisdiction and sovereignty to kidnap your children, which is a fallacy. It is absolute contempt of the American people. And we'll resolve that issue in the future. But what happened was that this money paid to the American people was their right from George Washington, that any trade tariff taxes collected was given to the American people and was not to be a government for profit. So there was no Bank of England from 1789 until 1861, when, after the Federal Reserve Bank, who would actually create the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913, shot dead the president to rob the gold and silver, England stole that gold and gave it to the King of England, so that after they killed the King of Russia, but giving it to the King of England, who used it to buy the Alaskan territory under the guise of the United States, taking the Russian land away from Russia, that they would kill the King of Russia later and take the gold for themselves. And so that, before the King of Russia was killed, that's why they set up the Federal Reserve Bank, because this Federal Reserve Bank were a bunch of murderers. They would kill the King of Russia and take his gold. So that now that we have this bank of murderers, John F. Kennedy was going to end the Federal Reserve Bank December 1963, and before December 1963 announcement, they killed him in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, so that he could not end the Federal Reserve Bank of England. And now you know the government that was kidnapping the American people by bullets and killing them. I myself, of course, have been under this assault 695 times, and I've been shot at in Michigan, shot at in Florida, and shot at in Texas. I could show you a coat here with a bullet hole. Besides all the other pictures of evidence that I'd taken to show that this government votes by guns. And if that Donald Trump taking your mail ballot election away from you, calling the American people corrupt, said it in Zelensky, August 18th. We're going to end the mail-in ballot. The American people are corrupt. The American people are corrupt. The American people are corrupt. Well, how many times you got to slap the American people across the face that they're corrupt because of mail-in ballots? 7 times. Well, we elected a corrupt politician, Donald Trump. And he called it a mandate from the Federal Reserve Bank because the Federal Reserve Bank Act declared that the president was a federal president. Well, in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1, the president was of the militia, not the Federal Reserve Bank. By 1913, now the president's of the Federal Reserve Bank of England, and England doesn't give a damn about your vote. They can appoint whoever they want to kidnap the United States. And that's why Donald Trump says he had a mandate, not from the American elector or voters. He had a mandate from England to kidnap you. And that's why 100% of the American population got kidnapped under trade tariffs so that England could collect 30% of the wealth of your children and give it to the Bank of England. So the Bank of England can finance their army for invading the United States and committing armed overthrow of the American people. And this war is unavoidable. When you disagree with the government of England, just like George Washington and the militia in 1775, they're going to fight against you. They don't give a damn. They'd rather kill you than allow you to end their government of England and their assumed authority to take possession of the United States as their property title. So, when the Federal Reserve Bank was created December 23rd, 1913, the signature of Frank Knox, it was a declaration of war against the United States. So when you see Donald Trump in his authority as a declaration of war as the Federal Reserve Bank president against the United States, anybody speaking against Donald Trump attacks them in war prosecuting. Every one of them. Wall Street Journal, CBS, yada, yada, yada. You say anything against Donald Trump, and he's an act of war of the Federal Reserve Bank against the United States to prosecute you. So you can understand when I say Google, YouTube, and Microsoft lining up behind the Lord God Almighty, they're facing an act of a president to prosecute them that if you don't throw the Constitution in federal prison, if you don't throw the Bill of Rights in a federal prison, if you don't throw the Declaration of Independence in a federal prison, the freedom of speech, the freedom of petition, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of press into a federal prison, what's he going to do? Prosecute you? Hell, he's literally an act of war against the United States as president. And he's trying to take your money that George Washington, once the trade tariffs were collected, would give right back to you. But that was ended because England took control and they weren't going to take money from the American people and surrender it back to you. So this is kidnapping, armed robbery, the worst of both worlds. Now, I repeat, I'm not inciting violence. You Americans have another civilized manner in which you can take over control. I'm not ordering any violence to be created, nor will I take any responsibility of anybody committing violence. But your enemy are already violent in the United States. Don't associate with them. When they act like they can be violent, stay away from them. When I set up and create leaders of a future organization, which I'll speak about, and they start assassinating them as if coercion and extortion, that they're not going to be prosecuted committing murder of Americans. There hasn't been one prosecution of my attempted murder in any state because they are fearful of that extortion of a government of assassins, that if they stand up to prosecute them, that they would themselves be killed. So here's the nation going to have to assemble in the face of an extortion that England acts like murder from 1775. And when they took control of the gold treasury away from the Apportion Law Act of George Washington to be distributed to the American people, they murdered Abraham Lincoln to do it. Abraham Lincoln was going to distribute the gold because what they did is they put a blockade around the South, from the South being trading with England and receiving gold and silver coin. So all the North had the access to the gold and silver coin, and after the war, to rebuild the nation, Lincoln was going to distribute that gold and silver treasury to the South and North to pay for widows who were created from 700,000 dead, to pay for the injured who were casualties in the war, North and South. And then the Southern gold would have came out and balanced it off from what they had been previously given, and there would have been this exchange of gold, rebuilding the country and reconstruction. But England got involved with their extortion and murder, shot Lincoln dead, and stole the gold from the North. When the North had their gold stolen, the South started burying their gold because they weren't going to let the North steal their gold. Because if that was all it was to kidnap the blacks as slaves of the federal 14th Amendment, and then take by force of arms the gold from the South of George Washington, that's when all the lost gold of the South had occurred. Because the federal government was committing armed robbery of the United States by a government of England. Now I got a gold machine. Okay? What am I going to do? All right? I'm the Son of God from heaven. I'm the treasury of heaven. And God had me given specifically the authority to make this gold machine for your benefits. So your labor can be justified in building in freedom, that you'll also equally share in that building of this nation. But this is the Donald Trump era. If he's making poverty even greater, that the 660, 170 million people living in poverty, now they're living in poverty 30% higher as in lost wealth. And eventually he would like to see the Americans declared insurrection so that he can kidnap the entire nation. That being in regard, you Americans are being offended, and nobody is describing it because they're all afraid to be shot dead. Well, not me. I've went through the gauntlet 45 years, and they're terrified of me because I got more power than that. Now to survive death, but to respond to their assault against me. And I'm not ashamed of it. Because if they want to commit an undeclared act of war against me, I've already declared war against them, so I'm conscious clear. But I'm telling you, Americans, you'll have to wait until you assemble in another manner. Now, I'll discuss this assembly so that the gold machine can be regarded as the property of a nation because your labor creates that wealth. We have it in the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which Donald Trump wants to throw in federal prison. Well, reading Article 5, you should comprehend that when 3/4 of the legislatures get together, they can change the laws of this nation. So, what is the legislature? Each and every state citizen is a member of the legislature. It's not these political hacks being elected. The legislature are the state citizens. Now, in creating a constitutional convention of the state citizens, we the people, even if you don't have a vote, you are a member of the legislature existing as a state citizen in this nation. You can put your name on that registration form listing the right to a constitution convention. So you can put your just born babies, X, their name, date of birth. That's a legislature member. You can put your young children, X, name, signature, date of birth. If you want the last four numbers of their social security number, but not the whole number, of course. Your teenage children can sign that petition. Young adults, even if they don't have a voting right, children in the street, the homeless, can sign that petition because they're all state legislature members. There's no requirement in Article 5 for anybody having an elected vote. Oh, the elderly who are going to be dismembered by Donald Trump because their mail-in ballots are going to be stolen, they can sign that constitutional petition. When you got 250 million signatures from babies to the elderly, you have the right of a constitutional convention of we the people. I don't give a damn about these state legislatures that don't care about a God and have no oath of God. Every one of them are communists. I don't care about these legislatures of Democrats and Republicans. They're not the legislature of the Article 5. It's we the people. You put down all your names of 250 million people, we're going to end this government. We're going to impeach them all. The governor's impeached. The legislature's impeached. We will assemble out of those 250 million people our next elected government in every district and every voting agenda, and we will remove this government from office. That if they're not defending us from Donald Trump's kidnapping, they don't have a right to represent the American people. Of course, we'll impeach them all at the Constitutional Convention, And then, when they refuse to surrender their offices and they want to fight the American people to kidnap you, well then you'll know what to do. Treason against we the people is a death sentence. And then you'll have to vote with your guns, just like the Jewish people are voting against me with their guns. But they're not going to be bulletproof because they don't have an oath of God, so it doesn't really matter. You'll have your children bulletproof, and you won't have any fear of changing the government of the United States, because you'll have 250 million against 25% of the population, mega Republican communist. You can't remove Donald Trump. Donald Trump declared the United States citizens insurrection. Isn't that wonderful? Our 70. He said one day, I have a right to remove citizenship all the way back to 1775, which means if you're not citizens, you're not legislatures. He wants to end Article 5 of the people changing their government from one of a kidnapper that is now known and is now in contempt of the United States, committing armed robbery of the wealth of our children in violation of the Constitution, in serving a government of England, which just over the weekend here, September 19th, 20th, Donald Trump standing there at the table of Charles II, announcing he's the government of England in America. I guess he's describing his service to the government of England. Now, a lot of people didn't appreciate my previous habits in the last video, but, you know, I only drank once in 2 hours. I sip my imbibery like champagne, and it's like takes a long time to go through a can of beer. 2, 3, 4 hours. I got a lot of things to do and work that I don't get paid for. It's just the activity that I'm in service of God, and I have to be at least somewhat sober. Now, you got to understand this. I've had a lot of injuries in my life. I'm living a life of pain. I had 7 fractured ribs in 1 accident. Other accidents, I had broken bones in both feet, fractures in ankles. My left collarbone has been broken in 1 accident, never reset. 2 broken ribs under the same one. Another bicycle accident, the 2nd and 3rd cervical in the neck. Fractured, almost killing me. I got a hernia from an assault by a sheriff that fell on me. And my back is twisted like a pretzel. So I don't take painkillers, okay? There's nothing I can do about that. If I feel the pain, I know I'm alive. But at least I can ameliorate it a little bit during the day without being overly intoxicated. I still put myself to sleep at night. But anyways, the fact is that the American people do not have to rely on their representation who is failing them, as if kidnapping the American people was their purpose of being elected in state legislatures, governor seats, in the Congress of the United States, and of course Donald Trump telling everybody he's kidnapping 100% of the American people and taking 30% of your wealth regardless. For the government of England, he visited and said he's been successful and slapping the American people, calling them corrupt in his extortion and coercion to rob them of their wealth. Well, I take that personally myself. As a son of God, I'm a 65-year-old virgin, and I have never done a corrupt thing in my life to have Donald Trump call me corrupt. I never owned a gun to threaten anybody, and I got arrested as a threat because the federal government used artificial intelligence to record my voice, twist it all into a speech to make me look like I threatened somebody's life. And I never even owned a gun after they came up to destroy all my property. Upon their arrest, just to humiliate me as a god. And I asked God at that time, I'd like to kill these 3 men kidnapping me. This is an act of war. And I had to actually hear Jesus' voice say, no, to stop me from doing it. Because I wouldn't have had a gun to do it with, the sword in my mouth. October 10th, 1988, George Michaels of Wham was going to kidnap me while I was traveling across Kansas. Just outside of Florence, I saw his aircraft in the sky, and I said, I did a sweep of my left hand, cut his throat, and that ended his concert tour for 1988. He had to have throat surgery. So I know it's there. And in between, they murdered me in jail cells, sheriff cells across the United States, and I had to be resurrected. Just for this purpose, so that you could see me as a son of God, save America from an international crime, conspiring to invade and kidnap the American people in violation of the laws of our nation, as led by treason in the White House. And I have a right to declare that. The mega communists wanting to kidnap the United States are not going to be happy to hear it, but that's too bad. They don't have an oath of God. And if they want to vote by guns against the American people, well, 250 million bulletproof citizens are not going to stand there and let these oathless cowards of criminal conspiracy to kidnap the United States continue their activity as if they're not going to be prosecuted for their conspiracy. Donald Trump says, oh, I got the immunity of the Supreme Court. You can't prosecute me. Well, 250 million people in an Article 5 petition of peaceful assembly, peacefully changing the President of the United States to a Lord God Almighty president, and Donald Trump calls that constitutional right insurrection, then he's going to be openly conspiring to commit murder of the American people. As if he can't end your vote, he's going to kill it. Well, kidnapping the American people into concentration camps and taking 100% of your wealth is not the intended purpose of the President of the United States. But that's his intended goal. So that's the plan of the future. Now, I got shot at April 3rd, 2023. I got shot at April 7th and 8th, April 2024. I got shot at April 26th, 2025, and a lady in the neighborhood saying they're firing guns in the neighborhood. Now, the plan is now, George Washington was elected president April 30th, 1789. we can have a constitutional convention of 250 million signatures of the legislature being the citizens of the United States. Doesn't require you to have a vote or a registration to vote. You're just a citizen of the legislature. And you can add your signature to that petition, whether homeless, whether aged in a retirement home, whether a baby in the womb. You're a member of the legislature, and you can collect 250 million votes, and that's the law. That's 3/4 majority of the United States. The state governors and the state legislatures would be hard-pressed to declare otherwise, that it's illegal for we, the people, to have a constitutional convention of 3/4 of the majority of the people to impeach them. What are the governors and the legislature going to do? Allow Donald Trump to commit murder of the American people because they're insurrection? Because they're performing their rights of law? And the government of England wants to shoot them all dead because they have the right to change a government from murderers into those that will serve them? And especially not stealing their wealth, which is currently the reality. And I can describe to you the kidnapping of the American people. That the Federal Reserve Bank paying themselves to kidnap your children. Now, it's known in the Federal Bureau of Investigation that can't investigate kidnapping unless there's a ransom note. Well, with the Federal Reserve Bank paying themselves to kidnap your children, they don't have to give a ransom note. They're paying themselves to kidnap your children. 175,000, 1970s. 362,000, 1980s. 500,000 children, 1990s. Hell, they were getting up into the millions after 2000 of kidnapped children. They were paying themselves so they never had to give a ransom note. And how were they paying themselves? You were paying interest payments on the national debt. And the money that you had to pay in their interest payments was their payment to kidnap your children. Now here's Donald Trump. He kidnaps the whole nation, 100% of you, and 30% of your wealth is their ransom note. You don't have to put up with Donald Trump. You make that peaceful assembly of that petition, to sign it, receive your oath of God, each and every one of you. You don't even have to have a voter's registration card to sign. All you are is a member of the legislatures of the states because of your citizenship. 250 million out of 335 million. That's 3/4 of the population. You are the law at a constitutional convention of we the people. The governors don't have to be there. The legislatures don't have to be there. Just we the people. And then we can create our own government from among those members. Impeach the government for the treason that they committed. And when they refuse to surrender to we the people, you know just what to do. They voted to kill me by their guns as their legalized vote. They're going to vote to kill you. And you can end that government of treason from perpetrating their crimes against the United States. Now, of course, the president will be impeached by the people. The Congress of the United States will be impeached by the people. I'll instruct how all these government agencies will be restructured and restored by the original Constitution of George Washington. Maybe another broadcast. But the American people have their work cut out for them. It's going to take a lot of brave souls. I saw the anti-tax protest in 1976, 1996, where the federal government used biological warfare of a cancer agent to arrest the anti-tax protesters, hold them under 4241D in hospitals, inject them with this cancer agent, and they were dead within 4 months. 500,000 murdered every month. Well, actually, they say it's 500,000 every year. But the fact is that that was just the death toll outside of the prisons in the it's 2 million. That's $1 million a year for 20 years. $1 million dead a year. Because 500 unreported cancer deaths by federal courts and 500 million murdered outside of the courts in public hospitals, that's $1 million a year for 20 years, 20 million anti-tax protesters murdered. So they're not afraid that they even shot dead the leaders of the anti-tax protesters in broad daylight. They would attack them. The stories of the names I could give you, John Singer and others, that they attacked them mercilessly from alerting the American people that there was being illegal taxes placed on the American people. And of course, the illegal tax, of course, was June 25th, 1940, the income tax on wages, making Americans slaves for the War of England in the world. And then afterwards, when they said that they would end the tax, Congress said, nope, we're going to continue the income tax on wages of the American slaves to pay the Federal Reserve Bank their national debt, which would eventually evolve into the kidnapping of the American children. So Donald Trump can lower income taxes on wages. He just raises the tax on the tariffs across the world to force the world to raise their prices in America, and he still collects more than he would have otherwise in raising income taxes. But in lowering that, he's collecting more to the Federal Reserve Bank in their armed robbery of the United States. And the evolution of you paying for your kidnappers is that they're raising an army of Britex in America, a British army, mercenaries hired, so that they could all disguise themselves as federal agents to kidnap the United States under a British army wearing American uniforms, even calling themselves the National Guards. A federal state that has never been ratified is now creating National Guards as if they're a state of a British army. Not all National Guards are bad. Army reservists, they go back to their states. They're not that bad. They want to defend their children from being kidnapped, defend their states and their freedom. But here is a foreign army acting like National Guards, and Donald Trump is deploying them for the purpose of, when there's a Wall Street crash, he's going to seize the property of the United States as his privilege to possess and ownership. As the president of the Federal Reserve Bank slave masters of England. Even though I have a gold machine to say otherwise, in interstate trade, he can't tax or control that. So he's got a quandary of how he's going to be able to fabricate an excuse that the Americans are operating an insurrection, and he can force the issue of a government of England to commit armed aggression against the American people, including using foreign United Nations forces to invade the United States. Well, now that I got the one successive April and a second successive April and a third successive April, now you can have an Article 5 of state legislature citizens by the majority of your signatures, of even your children included as members of the legislatures of the states, even without a vote, that 250 million people can agree that they can make a new president after the image of George Washington, April 30th, 2026. And this would be the will of we the people, that we are no longer going to surrender to all these political benefactors who surrendered their souls to the Jewish Bank of England, that they sold your children to a foreign enemy, and by the extortion say that if you don't surrender, we'll kill you. We didn't elect a government to kidnap or kill us, but that's what they're threatening. And Donald Trump is that prosecution of war, prosecuting those that speak against him. So I have to congratulate Google and YouTube and Microsoft that if they allow the American people to hear a Lord God Almighty give them their rights to assemble peacefully, to petition we the people, and assemble those signatures, and the count of those people that agree by a 3/4 majority of the American people that they can change their government in a convention and end the fiasco that they're suffering now. The indignity, the insult, the humiliation, the disgrace of misrepresentation, as if they have a mandate to rob the American people of their wealth. Well, my gold machine is not a mandate to kidnap the American people to rob you of your wealth. That's the treasury of heaven that Jesus Christ had delivered with Christ Peter. That Nostradamus spoke about it in the prophecies. In century 9, quatrain 12, I built Hermes and Diane by the lake many little silver pieces. That's my stained glass mirror art that I learned in Tyler, Texas. But the next two lines, the artisan is looking for new clay. His followers will be soaked in gold. Mentioning the gold machine. Another one, century 3, quatrain 2, is when I had the sixth sealed vision of John Paul II, dead before the feet of Jesus Christ, but on my toenail, in the blood of Jesus Christ, that I was his blood brother. He mentions the golden deed in that century 3, quatrain 2. So here's an American people being forced into poverty. Even worse, 30% greater poverty than previously, in a president that disregards any of the suffering of the American people. And Jesus Christ gave me your solution, your answer, educated me. I had to survive 695 attempted murders because you were not to be told the truth. And that wasn't going to happen even after I was murdered and then having to be resurrected again. So I'm the one that's going to the front lines. I'm the one standing in the trenches for you, letting you know just what you need to do. And if anybody assassinates the leaders of that constitutional convention collecting signatures, there's going to be hell to pay. Because the government will most likely not be prosecuting those killers, the vigilantes that declared in the last election a whole list of 200,000 people that have no right to vote. Well, they can't stop this election. They can't stop this assembly, because even without your right to vote, you have a right to sign on as a state legislature citizen, even aliens. In the total count of that 250 million, that is the overwhelming majority. That when that assembly has those 250 million signatures, that assembly is the law of the nation, disregarding the governors, disregarding the state legislatures, disregarding the president, and certainly disregarding the Congress, because they can all be impeached right there at that convention. They fail to represent the Son of God. They have no oath of God. All the Jewish rabbi, he's not God. Well, they have a law, Deuteronomy 12, chapter 2 and 3, to kill God and anybody who worships God. So the Jews are invading the United States with their rabbi law to kill the Constitution, kill the Bill of Rights, kill the Declaration of Independence, and certainly kill the law of God. So what law are they going to replace? Oh, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and the law of God. What were they going to replace it with? When they killed Jesus, what law were they going to replace killing Jesus' law was? When they killed the king of Russia and killed 1.5 billion children, what law were the Jews replacing after killing the Christian king representing God? Now they want to kill a son of God and kill all Christianity. And who are they going to, what law is the satanic Jewish devils going to replace in destroying the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and of course the law of God? A tyrannical, terrorist, totalitarian tyrant? Dictating his anarchy over the United States as nobody can prosecute him? Now, I have to tell you, this is a peaceful effort. Takes time to assemble. Gives the tooling industries the right to build up the weapons designs of Gregory L. McCown that are superior to the world in every regard. Because the world is going to hate me. Because they're not going to want to surrender to a God in the United States when they had designs to conquer the world for themselves. And a disgrace, of course, in all that is that they're not going to be bulletproof in the next war, and the wrath of God is going to be all over them for it. FIFA may not want to come into the United States in June because with a new president April 30th, 2026, they might disagree with having their FIFA tournament in the United States. Of which they may not agree with the Lord God Almighty to be their authority in Europe or anywhere else in the world, especially China or Russia. So, in that regard, the American people have their escape clause in the Constitution. And the state legislatures can't sit there and say they can't recognize the state citizens in their We the People, Article 5 convention. But the state citizens are the legislatures. They vote for the legislatures, they're members of the legislatures, but even if they're not elected to the legislatures, the state citizens are still the legislatures. And every state citizen, whatever age, 1, 2, 3 years of age, even up to the retirement age, or elderly, who are being robbed of their mail-in ballots because they're all corrupt. Can you imagine all that? All the honorable and dignified elderly age are all corrupt. Now they just told the nation, you're all corrupt. Now, if we go back in history, the South told the North they're corrupt, the North told the South they're corrupt, and they had the 1861 Civil War calling people corrupt. And now here's Donald Trump bringing us all the way back to the Civil War, calling everybody corrupt, as if you can't prosecute me calling you corrupt. This video has been interfered with several times. Nothing I can do about it. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there that hate my guts. Not that I really care about that. They can't do anything about it. I can deliver the truth to the American people, tell them you can peacefully assemble. You can peacefully change the government. But when those people calling you corrupt are actually corrupt, they're the ones that are going to be violent because they'll not recognize the authority of the people to control the government, as Benjamin Franklin said when he titled the Constitution, "We the People." Because even he saw the genius of George Washington in that Constitution. That when that Article 5 was created, there was no electoral vote. There's no voter election rights necessary to list yourself on a petition as a member of a legislature, which everybody is. 100% of the American people are the legislature. And that's why Donald Trump wanted to take away your citizenship, so that no one can claim to be members of the legislature. And then his kidnapping of the aliens is just horrendous. Taking them right out of their work building America. He said he's going to make America great again, and he's destroying the building. Destroys 10,000 federal projects of building around the United States. Even in the red areas where he was elected, he stopped their projects. You know darn well they're going to sign that petition to throw Donald Trump out of the office so they can revert back to Gregory Allen gold machine and start rebuilding the projects that they had already authorized and gave consent to. So this is going to be a very swift action. Not going to be very long to April 30th, 2026, and a new president. And the old one, well, he's going to be the most violent SOB in the history of the United States, declaring the American people insurrection. Then you got to consider all the governors being thrown out, saying the people can't throw us out. They just got unelected. So I wouldn't be surprised that all the governors sign the petitions and all the legislature members sign the petition because they don't want to be seen otherwise being with the majority of the American people. Or else they'll get thrown out of office in November 2026. So then I had some spiritually negative feedback that you're not going to build atomic weapons. Excuse me. The military has just got impeached. The basic principle is that with 2 million atomic artillery warheads, and I had to fight against Russia sometime, that when they shoot those artillery shells in the sky, I got a skeet gun, nuclear ballistic railgun, practically a skeet gun, that can shoot them down, destroy them before they explode, And it's like they're throwing the skeet up and we're shooting it down. All 2 million of them. And if they want to go into a higher volume of nuclear threat, the city busters, I'll have 500,000 nuclear ballistic railguns across the United States. So that if there's a nuclear ballistic threat against the United States in any location, they'll be able to shoot down those incoming warheads with their nuclear ballistic railguns. And they won't be able to explode over the United States. We'll have to have a lot of hazmat organization to pick up all the nuclear waste material, but the counter response, of course, would be, well, we can end the war shorter dropping our thermos on top of their cities, and that'll end the war a lot quicker. So the nuclear ballistic railgun is just the next generation of weapon superiority of the United States for you to survive into the 1,000-year kingdom of God, of which England wanted your 1,000 years to be slaves to their kingdom. And of course, Jesus said, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Well, now you got the kingdom of Gregory Allen Cowan against the kingdom of England, and Donald Trump, the king of England in America. And my kingdom's going to end Donald Trump's kingdom in a very short period of time, and Donald Trump is going to turn violent. We can peacefully change the government, and Donald Trump will be turned violent. Because the American people don't have to surrender to a tyrant, and definitely not when they have the majority of the people to say that he don't have the authority of government as by the Constitution of the United States, and he is now unconstitutional as a tyrant. And we have the laws of George Washington to stand up and face that tyrant in the majority and end his anarchy as a lawless man. And he says, he can violate the laws of the United States to save the American people. The only thing that saves the American people is the obedience to the law, not violating it. What he was saying is, in violation of the law, he's a foreign enemy to save a nation of an enemy invading. And the American people are going to be sacrificed by the government of Donald Trump. Well, we've already got that message. But in ending the government of England in the United States, we'll provoke the whole world to say, we're not going to let. They're going to be calling me Satan. Oh boy. That fascist Satan, we're not going to let him take control of the world. Well, they don't have an oath of God, so they have a ghost of a chance to survive anyways. Only because they would have to create their own nuclear ballistic railgun, and mine's going to be superior. And we'll have to lay waste to their civilizations and their contempt of God Because if they don't want to live in an oath of God upon the earth, and I'll be controlling their societies, I'll be controlling their sciences, I'll be controlling their industrial capabilities. And when they refuse, I'll just destroy their nations. Because what they would want to do is given a time, we can build the same weapons that he created. We have a greater population, we'll be able to conquer them. Well, while I have the weapon superiority, there's no time to delay. One, to change control of the government in the United States. And with the production of that weapon superiority, go after the rest of the communist world of the United Nations. Yeah, they're the United Nations Federal Communists. And you're throwing out the United Nations Federal Communist capital of Washington, D.C. right on their face. Impeaching them in their military command, saying, we don't need you anymore. And if you want to think that you can kidnap the United States instead of defending the American people, the Pentagon's going to lose their last war against the American people. We don't have to go anywhere in the world to fight the communists. They're here. And they won't give an oath of God. They'll think the whole world can conquer the United States. Well, if they do, you're already the living dead. So there's no difficulty in deciding what you need to do. I've been The Walking Dead for a long time with a band in my body from Zechariah 11 that the Jews planted on me to strangle my body. And I'm that pale horse rider of death. And God won't let me die. So I have to be the one to stand up, motivate the American people, and save your children. Because there's any one hope for an oath of God among the American people. George Washington ordered that oath of God in the Constitution only because when the angel of God presented himself at Valley Forge to give him the future and told him that he would be God in the future that would give birth to George Washington, calling George Washington son of the Republic. That George Washington said, well, you all going to have an oath of God if you're going to survive the future. And when that enemy sees me and says, you're Satan, we don't have to give you an oath of God, we have our own God, well, you can understand that they're going to fight with their God in the concept that their God has a right to commit murder of Christianity in the United States. And I'm certain you're all going to dispute that. And the blessing of Jesus Christ is that he's not going to let the faithful die when they stand to that battle. You'll all be bulletproof like I am. Because I have to stand here and prepare these presentations to educate you. And I'll get into a lot of my 10 books of 10 volumes of material to give you each and every time I give a broadcast another vantage point, especially of Jewish history being murderous, absolutely murderous. When Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 2 and 3, law of the rabbis to invade nations and murder them. And now here they are, the Jewish rabbi with their law to claim jurisdiction to kidnap you and murder. And that's how they tried to kill me, as the claim of being God. It is their law, they're Jews in America, which is no law in America. The Jews are not the law. But they're claiming they are the law, and they can murder anybody they want. That is horrific. They can kidnap our children for 54 years. And no one prosecuted the Jews for the kidnapping. They could rob our people since 1865, and no one's prosecuting the government of England for armed robbery, stealing 22,000 tons of gold out of Fort Knox and shipping it back to England. That after England paid all that gold in trade tariffs, seized it all from the American people May 1st, 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, oh, he was a great president, communist socialist. And that even the gold from 1849 California and 1878 Alaska that was seized back from the American people by Franklin Delano Roosevelt was taken back to England. Now England's taking your wealth, and they're using it to mock the American people, that they can take your wealth and you can pay your kidnappers to conquer your nation. And they hate my guts because a nuclear ballistic railgun stands in their face. That weapon superiority could knock them down and annihilate them and leave no posterity. Because if you consider the Jewish children and the federal communist children, each generation being raised continue the next generation, the previous generation's criminal activity against the United States. And the next generation of posterity of the federal communists is not going to survive. So I had discussed other equipment, and of which the military announced it. You know, I've got a copyright book, code name Alabama, America's Last August Battle Against Military Aggression. And I delineated a new manner of a compressor motor in highly specific detail, and how they can operate it under 3 different modes. A compressor mode of taking atmospheric gas and compressing it into liquid. 2, it can be used as a combustion motor of regular drive, and another is an electric drive with magnetos. But all 3 are in the same conception, that it can be used in any of one of the 3 modes. And now the military says they got an aircraft that can fly around the world, only because the compressor motor can therefore refuel the aircraft in flight. nobody in Detroit wants me to be credited with that, because after I wrote it in my book, it was classified in the military command from being made public. So I spoke about it once at Motor City Sign in 1988 to 1993, and I wrote about it in 1998 to 2001. But that was just one of the projects as a space fighter jet, along with the nuclear ballistic railgun that would be included in the aircraft designed for its own defense. Then there's a rotating armored tank shell, so that with a rotating armored shell around a tank, the kinetic energy on a rail, 40,000 feet per second, makes like 10 feet of steel in effect. There isn't a round of ammunition concurrently anywhere in the world that can explode through 10 feet of steel effect. So when I put 4 nuclear ballistic railguns on top of the tank for aerial defense, a group of 4 of these tanks, that would be 12 guns that can point to the sky and strike down every artillery shell that's ever fired at them. Because in the rotating armor, you got phased array radar, and then you can put among the 4 guns, you could put another radar stand of an AWACS. So you'd have 2 points of observation, an AWACS on top of the center of the tank, and the rotating armor plate and phased array radar and other radar systems, visuals, that they have an angular capability, that they could spot these shells, accurately identify them, target them, and destroy them. And then, of course, with advanced computers, they could operate with the other tanks' aerial observation platforms to therefore triangulate even greater aspects of accuracy from just a single tank to several tanks, and intercept those artillery shells from landing and falling, no matter how many in sequence that they fire. Because eventually, once they fire their first shells, we know the location of their guns. We're going to do counter battery fire on their gun locations and stop them from firing further shells. So they may get a few shells lobbed over, we strike them down, their gun locations are identified, and we start counter battery firing on their gun positions and destroy them. And that ends their artillery fire, or even their missile batteries. So there's nothing going to stop me from building that nuclear ballistic railgun. Because, first of all, it's going to be for the defense of the United States, and then it's going to be the punishment of the world. I'd never called anybody corrupt. But if you want to say it in another term, they're all godless. They ain't got an oath of God. They ain't got no permission from me to live very long on my earth. Now, one of the things that you should understand is that from Tyler, Texas, I created the stained glass mirror by resilvering the glass with silver to be reflecting as mirror. And that became the art that I learned from Tyler, Texas at Columbus Art Class. But in creating the arts prophecies, they were all art prophecies. And it's a side story that a high school girlfriend, intimated she might want to get married to me. So I went down to Tyler, Texas, and then she got stowed away from another Texan. Well, you didn't let me know what you came down here for. Well, if you didn't understand why I came down here for in the first place, why did you get married to him? Well, the bait was done. And then I went through a series of jobs until I got it into Columbus Art Class, Golden Opportunity. They had a picture on the wall, and there was a little figurine in the sky, and a little girl took a picture of what they claimed it was Jesus Christ in the clouds. Well, that's fine with me. I'm Christ Peter on the earth, and I already knew I was the Son of God, so with Jesus in the clouds in that picture, at least I knew I wasn't Jesus Christ. Anyways, the fact is from that golden opportunity, I went into Columbus Art Class for 9 months. Learned the stained glass industry, learned mirror resilvering, and even improved his system itself because he had a mistake in his process that I purged to make sure that his mirror production was pristine. But after he fired me after 9 months because he didn't want to pay me $563 for staying there a day past 9 months, that a couple months later, I returned back to Michigan, and I was determined to start my own mirror resilvering product. And I did that starting in 1994, in late December, and into 1995. And with the materials that I had collected, created the prophecy of mirrored glass in the various images that I sent out in my books. And I could put on these videos, but I'm not getting that involved yet, into adding in pictures into these videos. But when it came to a point in time when I was at Motor City Sign, and I couldn't protect my mirrors, and no one gave a damn about me as the Son of God, and then to humiliate me when stealing these prophesied mirrors whole to somebody else taken out and claiming them for themselves, I smashed them all. And it says in prophecy, the clay that the potter was given will be smashed into shivers, like shivers of glass. And once I smash those mirrors, the next prophecy is, and I will give him the morning star. So here I smashed my own artwork just to keep it from being stolen. And God's going to give me the morning star. So here's the morning star, the solar sun out there. It shines on all the earth. The earth rotates and it shines on all the earth. He's giving me the earth in possession. So really, when this earth doesn't give me an oath of God that's already been written in prophecy is mine to possess, well, you'll know what to do. And you'll do it. They may not have long to live in their godlessness, but My weapons are being built as I speak, designed and developed, tooling, so that the prophecy is that I will control this earth eventually. And you Americans are going to see certain that I become the president April 30th, 2026. And you're going to stand there at that front line and you're going to tell that government they don't surrender. You're going to vote one way to end their government afterwards from the convention vote. Now, I've been given a promise by God that the next time they go to make me a prisoner, He's going to strike them dead. You know, Ezekiel chapter 3, warn them of me. Ezekiel chapter 33, warn them of me. Well, they've been warned. I don't want to see them killed. So I've ordered God to say that when they get within 3 miles of, or half a mile of wanting to arrest me, you kill them then. So I don't have to have 10,000, 20,000 dead men in the streets outside my home. They can start dropping dead before they even get within eyesight of me. They don't want to see God, kill them then. They're seeing me now, and they're all incited. Nothing I can do. You know, I got the treasury of heaven for the paradise of America from no longer living in poverty. And I know the money system that George Washington created to distribute that wealth to the American people so that you don't live in poverty. But that's not the intention of England when they want to rob you of your wealth and make you prisoners of war from 1775 and take 100% of your wealth as slaves. And you're not going to agree to that, and that's absolutely misrepresentation. And if they're all cowards, they can't stand up against a government of criminals, then they are the criminals because they sold their souls. Of course, you already know the rabbis, they don't have an oath of God. You know, I spoke to them in 1980 and ever since, and they have no conscious guilt of attempted murder of my life, nor any consent to accepting me as the Son of God, in that they can't accept me as a son of God and conquer the United States at the same time. They can't accept the Son of God and kill all of Christianity like they did in Russia at the same time. So their belligerence should be understood in the fact that they're the enemy of the United States that can never surrender to God of the Christians because they've already killed 352 million Americans. And they sealed the consensus so that nobody would know the murder of Christianity while the Jews had not been kidnapped, while the Jews had not been killed as anti-tax protesters, while the Jewish people did not suffer any of the 65 million abortions. That this was a target-specific government of England to raise the Jewish children and murder Christianity. Well, when we have our Constitution Convention, immediately thereafter, we're going to be opening up a consensus for the people to be financed with a consensus card, a debit card with all their personal identification, so that they can receive the wealth, that they're no longer living on the street in poverty. In fact, there would be millions of homes open of the people that would be removed because they're the enemy of God, and the poor people, the homeless people, can move into those residences and be sheltered. Jeremiah says, I will make them run. You got no oath of God, they're going to run. We're most likely going to be quarantined anyways. We already are. Well, the world will consider that they have their Jewish God over there calling himself Jesus Christ. And I'm fighting Jesus Christ. Well, I can show you the images of Jesus Christ that were given to me even as recently as 2014, 11 years ago. The image of Jesus Christ in heaven, 2005, and the image of Jesus Christ in heaven, 1985. There is going to be no return of Jesus Christ. In fact, the book of Revelations, after Jesus went up into heaven, he says in the book of John, you'll see me no more. So if we're not going to see Jesus anymore, who do we see? Well, when the book of Revelations, chapter 12, throws Satan out of heaven to the earth, Satan on the earth who murdered Jesus Christ, he's going to call himself Jesus Christ. Because there is Jesus in heaven and no Jesus on the earth, he's going to be the Jewish extortion to claim he's Jesus Christ. So that means myself as Christ Peter, in Matthew chapter 16, Jesus says the gates of hell should not prevail against you. Well, there's Satan calling himself Jesus. He's going to be the gates of hell. And I'm going to defeat that image in all of his lies. And of course, there's going to be an event afterwards where Jesus actually passes over in the air, just like that cloud that I've seen in the picture of Jesus in Golden Opportunity in Tyler, Texas, where everybody will see Jesus in the clouds passing over the earth, and we'll all be restored into our youth again. Forever, and in the promise of the book of Revelations that the second death will have no power over you. So when hell is resurrected after the 1,000 years, they're going to try in their second attempt to murder the resurrection of life upon the earth. And of course they fail again. Then Jesus actually comes down to the earth after the 1,000 years, after the war, of course. And he resurrects all the life and the dead, and he judges them. And of course, all those poor souls that lost this war go to hell 1,000 years, lose the next war, then have to be resurrected by God again just to be thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone forever, and says, as I said last time, game over. So, in that regard to the future prophecies, you know, we have this time to consider the poor souls that are standing there saying they don't have no oath of God and they don't have a right to be our God. Especially since there is a God to give an oath to and they refuse, which means, oh, they're still giving an oath of God. Well, whatever God you want them to consider they're giving it to, they can assume it's by the name of Jesus or God the Father in heaven, but they have no claim over Gregory Allen McCowan that Jesus Christ or God the Father wants me to be killed by them. And in that regard, that's why I'm still alive, presenting to you that in giving my life to God in His faith, I complained June 8, 1980. You know they're going to want to kill me just for claiming I'm the Son of God. But with that, you know, remorse, said to God that, well, yeah, I'm going to be declaring myself the Son of God. Okay. But you know the response in jealousy and contempt, that they had no idea of what Christ Peter was about, and that Jesus Christ would protect me during my entire life. That I'd even have to fight against a Jesus Christ returning as the actual Satan on the earth. And in that regard, the Christian church would say, we're not serving him as Christ Peter, we're serving Jesus Christ. And they'll carp at me all they want. But I had survived. You know, Jesus Christ. David Koresh called himself Jesus Christ, and he didn't survive. But I announced myself before David Koresh. I survived past David Koresh. This is 32 years after David Koresh. And my only survival is to continue to perform the same announcement that I know they want to kill me, or saying I'm the Son of God, even Christ Peter. But I know that my statement to God that He gave me His protection in these 45 years since, even if I was murdered 5 times because I wasn't violent and I didn't resist. And they murdered me just because, he thinks he's the Son of God, let's get rid of him. And then I was back alive in their face after they gave me death. What are they going to do? Try and kill me again? They did it again anyways. Another state, another jail cell. They wouldn't give up. They have no oath of God. Maybe they're just waiting for the day when, well, the wrath of God appears and they're going to receive their punishment. But other than that, I have a lot of historical studies that I've made in regard to government, out of which I tried to get the government of the states to understand their situation and that they were stripped of all their controls by a federal communism in 1868 by the 14th Amendment. Governors lost control selecting the military. Governors lost control of the Senate. Governors lost control of their banking eventually. State legislatures lost control of their image of Congress. And all of this lost power created a federal communist government of England. And now it has evolved into a national threat to commit armed overthrow of the American people and destroy all your citizenship all the way back to 1775, as Donald Trump said. I would think I have the right to strip them all of their citizenship back to 1775, which is basically the only people in 1775 that didn't have citizenship were black slaves. So, in that regard, Donald Trump is going to reduce all of us into slavery. 100% taxation. And England would be our prison guards as a nation conquering us. Now, who understands and remembers CBS News, a child that was kidnapped? I might have mentioned this already before. June 2023, approximately 13th or so, out of an upstate New York park where she was kidnapped. And then the CBS reported that in the previous year, 395,000 Americans were missing. Do we have Christianity kidnapping Christianity? No. So if we had an open consensus and we saw the identities of the ethnics of the people who were kidnapped, of the 395,000 kidnapped, none of them are Jews. None of them are the British Army. None of them are Federals. None of them are Arabs. But Christianity is being kidnapped by a host of foreign identities, even homegrown Americans, and selling them overseas, or just pure plain killing them in the United States. And no one in the government is declaring war against that enemy, because that kidnapping is the government as the enemy, because they're allied with the kidnappers. And here's Jeffrey Epstein in a federal prison, killed 2003, and 19 years later they're still kidnapping the United States. So in this war, we're not kidnapping anybody. Well, we actually are. A bullet kidnaps and kills, but we're not kidnapping them to repatriate them, exchange them as prisoners of war. We're burying them here. They came here, they violated us, they're going to fight us in a civil war, and we're not going to take them prisoner. We're not babysitting our enemies. We're not showing them mercy, we're not forgiving them. They wanted the complete genocide of the United States and humiliate us as a nation. And you've been given your Article 5 right to end their government. Basically, when you stand up on Article 5 and create Gregory Allen McCollum president, when you're impeaching that government, you're kidnapping them and throwing them out of office. Just desserts. Just what they deserve. You got 150,000 aliens kidnapped and thrown out of the country. And they had state citizen rights under United States Title Code 18, Chapter 13, Section 242. Aliens had state citizen rights. And they're kidnapping these state citizens and sending them to foreign prisons all over the world. As they say, see, our great communism in America is kidnapping the United States. Then he goes into the Washington, kidnaps 250,000 Federals, throws them in the street. Majority of them are Christians. All the watchdog societies, inspector generals, legal aids, business protection, healthcare services, CDC, Social Security, park rangers even. All the people that were serving the United States were thrown out, that we no longer have their services. Now, Donald Trump wants to end the service of the Son of God as President of the United States, with demanding I be put in a federal prison. I already told you how God's going to react to that. It's not going to happen. We're going to have to resurrect all of those healthcare services, all of those Social Security services, all of those watchdogs agencies, inspector generals, for the benefit of the American people, that Donald Trump isn't benefiting anybody but himself. And think about it. Stealing $50,000 per each one of those workers, he's going to pay $50,000 for a 250,000 man army to invade and kidnap the United States. In other words, he's just taking the wages that were paid to the people serving us and creating an army for the Jewish billionaires. Yeah, the Jewish Federal Reserve Bank of England billionaires raising a mercenary army hired to kidnap the United States. And they're all pissed off I'm building a railgun, that when they come to attempt that kidnapping, they'll have superior firepower in their face, and that will certainly end their government of treason into extinction. Because they won't be forgiven for glorifying Donald Trump as the next great image of America, destroying the American people, as if committing murder was his legal office right to do so. Oh, I have to violate the law to save America. Yeah, he's murdering the United States in civil war, saving the United States while he's murdering everybody. And a lot of those prisoners that went down to El Salvador, they went into a prison where it's already known that. Once you go in, the only way you get out alive is in a casket. That's a presidential murder. And of course, don't expect Donald Trump to declare war. He'll just say it's his right as the authority of the government to declare insurrection to assault you. When he went after Iran, he didn't even declare war against Iran. He just went in there and bombed it. Cold-blooded murder. Killing Iranians in disregard of international law protocols that he could commit murder without a declaration. Well, that's the lawless man that you have in the White House. At least you know, in my books, I already declared war against England. And boy, they blizzard of shots came after me after that. They read that. Kill the son of a bitch. Yeah, the government of England and America is trying to shoot me dead. And that's the government that wants to kidnap your children. And you'll know just what to do when they make that final attempt. That they can take away your vote. The final vote they have to take away is your guns. And as they use their guns to try and shoot me dead, your final vote is the use of your guns against their government. And you know who God's going to let die. And it ain't me. Anyways, I'm going to end this second broadcast. Now that you know the apportion law of George Washington that was supposed to take trade tariff taxes that England's putting in their pockets that was supposed to be delivered to the American people equally in shares. But the black people know that they were taking slaves, that when the apportion law was ended, they were supposed to give in their 60% share that the slave masters received. But because the blacks were kidnapped by the 14th Amendment federal government, that the blacks became the slaves of the federal government, the 60% apportion law that was supposed to be given to the blacks was given to the slave masters. And who were the slave masters? The federal government. So now you know the intentions of these people from 1865 to 1868 was they were a federal communist government to kidnap the United States and make you all slaves. And you still have your freedom to fight. And you do the best you can at denying this government for surviving before the end of Donald Trump's administration. Because Donald Trump, by the end of his administration, expected the American people to be dead. Anyways, I'm going to end this, and we'll have another broadcast to you in the near future. And I'll go over some of the history of the world for you. That would be in comparison to potential policies in the United States to betray the American people, creating a civil war between the Democrats and the Republicans. My recording stopped again, so I had to wait. The history of the world. They keep stopping my video. I have to end. They won't let me finish my final thoughts of the next session. We'll end it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this.